Well, there's an interested spectator on the first action of the day as we get ready for a bit of action on the circuit from the GT3 European Championship.
I think that might be a grasshopper doing my David Attenborough bit, but nevertheless, what a change in the morning from the previous 2 mornings.
Yeah, well, we've had overnight rain, haven't we, John? And it's brightened up a little bit now. There's been a warm-up session for the GT1 cars this morning, and they started quite damp. They were throwing up plumes of spray at the beginning, but by the end of the session, certainly pretty much a dry line, and the sun is coming out, it's brightening up. Temperature 22 degrees, track temperature just under 30 degrees, so it's going to dry pretty fast. You can see that sort of drying line, in fact, on the circuit. And I think that all of the GT3 cars that are on the grid are going out on slick tyres.
Yeah, it's interesting that the stewards of the meeting have issued a bulletin saying GT3 Race 2 wet track. Start will be behind the safety car, which is normal. Reminder, with a wet track, all cars must have their headlights on. And then they're all going out in slicks.
Yeah, so there you go.
Is that a miscommunication, or is that just a function of nature?
I suppose it gives them the option then, but they can choose to put their slicks on if they want. So, looking down towards the back end of the grid to start things off, this is the Mercedes of Jakob Knoll, the Mercedes-Benz SLS. A lot of Mercedes in the GT3 Championship this year. The Gullwing car, certainly a dramatic-looking machine, front-engined. It's pretty even mix between front-engined and mid-engined cars on the GT3 grid this year, and just 2 rear-engined cars, because we've only got the 2 Porsches in the field so far this season. Let's just quickly remind you what's going on. This is the 2nd race of the weekend at Navarra. It's the 6th race of this FIA GT European Championship so far, with a real mix of cars, as I mentioned, a real mix of drivers. You've got drivers of different grades. They may be bronze graded if they're fairly inexperienced, silver if they've got plenty of experience, and gold if they've got some real record championship winning credentials behind them. So you've got this mix of drivers. You've got a pit stop to come halfway through the race as well, but no tyre change. So the slicks that they've chosen now, of course, have to last them right through to the end of the race. And I suppose in some ways, John, that makes the decision easier, because you've got to run a whole hour on these tyres.
You do, and of course, because we are in the morning as opposed to when the first of these 2 races took place yesterday, in the afternoon it was extremely warm, 36.5 Celsius. And now it's, as you mentioned, 14 degrees cooler, and that's going to have a big bearing on how tyre performance is, and especially the rear tyre, which gets a lot of use around this 15-turn Navarra circuit. I drove it last night, and it was the first time I got a perspective of the racetrack, rather than just seeing it as you would see it here on screen. And certainly some of those corners, the tight corners down at turn 8 in particular, and turn 10, for me, was the most frustrating of all the corners here, because you never seem to quite slow down enough, and it is a corner where you must slow down to get the entry correct and not overrunning the exit of the corner. But no doubt everybody in the pit lane and in their cars will be delighted with the drop in temperature, which will give them, hopefully in their case, or most cases, some more bite from the rear, and not have, as we saw particularly in the case of the 458 Ferraris, and to some degree the Lamborghini, that they were struggling towards the end of their stints, driver stints, with the rear ends moving around.
Just saw Jan Halen, who's about to go out in the number 2 Pro Speed competition Porsche. Saw him briefly this morning. They didn't qualify particularly well with that car, 16th. But the 2 Pro Speed Porsches were set up quite differently. And the number 1 car actually was going quite well in qualifying, so they've changed the setup on the number 2 car, and I think he's much happier. Now, Edward Sundstrom had a great result yesterday, finished 2nd, but they start on row 10 this time. Let's hear from him.
Edward, what's the likely result you can achieve today?
I don't know. If you look on the track now, it's wet, it's damp, so I think we can achieve something. It's depending on the start and if we can gain some places there, but for sure we started here in Silverstone as well, and then we were 6th in the end. We have a penalty 10 seconds today, which makes it a little bit more hard, but of course we will try. We always try.
Thank you.
So yes, they've got a bit of work to be done from where they are on the grid, but no doubt we've seen how quick that BMW is, and in fact there are 2 BMWs right up on the front row of the grid, the 2 teammates, the Faster Racing by DB Motorsport cars. We'll come to them in a minute. We're still working our way up the order currently. You're looking there at the number 11 Mercedes. That's on the outside of row 7. Jarek Janis driving the car in the early part of the stint. And the Mercedes might not have had the speed in qualifying, John, but they seem to work their way upwards during the race yesterday. Yeah,
I mean, to some degree they depended on the carnage that took place further up the field ahead of them, and they ended up consistently finishing 4th and 5th, the 2 Heiko Motorsport cars. But in terms of sheer out-and-out performance, they weren't comparable to, say, the Z4 BMWs, the 458 Ferraris, and also, of course, that sole Lamborghini Murcielago that won yesterday's round with Nicholas Meyer-Mayhoff and Albert von Thurnen-Taxis. And so Mercedes are going to be there, and hopefully they'll use that reliability and the consistency to get them, maybe sneak one of those cars onto the podium.
Dan Brown and Glyn Geddy in their Ferrari. Glyn Geddy will be starting that car from the inside of the 7th row. They had some braking problems in qualifying yesterday, so they weren't really able to show representative pace. Carlos Giacomelli, this is the Scuderia Vittoria team. They have come into the championship and they're doing one-off races, so they don't actually score points, these guys, in the series, but obviously very competitive with that Ferrari 458. And we've got a car starting from pit lane, and that's the Ford that actually didn't make the start yesterday, but it is going to make the start. Obviously, it'll be able to join on, I think, at the back of the formation lap with a bit of luck. Christopher Nygaard is starting that car. It's going to have a bit of work to do to cut its way through the field, but that could make life entertaining. And as I say, the BMW of Sundstrom, particularly down at the back, will be watching very closely to see if that can make its progress up through the field as well. So there's the another of the Gullwing SLSs, and they are more numerous than any other make actually out on the grid at the moment. We've got, I think, 6 of the Mercedes, 4 BMWs, just the 1 Ford, just the 2 Porsches. Max Soule starting this time, John. We saw some quite exciting driving from his teammate Van Splunteren, particularly in qualifying yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, we had one particular shot coming out of, I think it was turn 6 or something. And normally you don't see a 911 getting out of shape because it's not really the ideal way to drive it, but Van Splunteren at the throttle, and he had the back end step out in a real full-blooded drift. I mean, great to look at, not particularly effective in terms of performance or lap time, and he was certainly showing that the relief that Porsche and the Audi R8s have had here this weekend have given them a refreshed lease of life, and hopefully we'll see that Porsche and some of the Audi R8s further up through the standings.
Now, this is the winning car from yesterday, Albert von Thurnen-Taxis, but it starts back on row 4 this time because it was second qualifying that didn't go quite so well. Albert starts, Nicky Meyer-Mayhoff will take over for the second part of the race, but it is a fast car, that Lamborghini. Great day for Lamborghini yesterday because they won both GT3 and GT1 here at Navarra. There's the Ferrari of Francesco Castellacci, but Federico Leo starting in the car, the black AF Corsa entry. And then you've got the Audi R8 of the Belgian Audi Club here. This is Enzo Ida and Greg Franchi. Greg Franchi is going to be starting the race this time. They've had a win already this season. That was at Portimao in Portugal. Leo and Castellacci, they've had a victory already in their Ferrari as well this season. But the BMW Z4s could be the ones to watch. Max Martin is in the number 9 Aston Martin. He's been out already this morning briefly in the GT1 warm-up. And then just up ahead is Matt Griffin in the M-Tech Ferrari. Keep an eye on him in the early stages. Could be very rapid indeed.
Yeah, I mean, Matt Griffin starting that car for sure. He's going to look to get to the front as quickly as possible. But the second row of the grid is, he's behind the 2 BMWs. So Matt Griffin might try to split the BMWs on the run up the hill into turn 1 and put that 458 into the lead.
So here we are on the front row with the 2 teammates, the 2 BMW Z4s. You've got Den Boer and Herbert Voss. They start in second place on the grid, and they are absolutely confident, I'm sure, that they're going to get a good result. But Nicky Katzberg here, who got the pole position, very fast driver. He's racing, in fact, for Nissan this weekend in GT1, so he's had a change from Corvette, which is what he's normally been racing in the past. But he's also out in this GT3 race. His co-driver, though, is not as quick as him, whereas the car on the right is a very evenly balanced driver team of Herbert Voss and Jeroen Den Boer. They lead the championship by some 2 points, that's all, over Sundstrom and Alfeisel. But as I say, Sundstrom and Alfeisel are starting way back on the 10th row of the grid. Now, the start of this race is going to be behind safety car because of the tricky conditions. And so what will happen is the safety car will lead, but the race effectively starts as soon as they move away under these specifications.
Yes, and I hope when the drivers come around turn 15 and they look up the pit straight that they realise it is a safety car start and they're not all standing on the throttle. So it's a slightly unusual circumstance. I don't think I've been certainly to one of these events so far this year where we've had this kind of situation where the start is still controlled by the safety car.
The difference is, of course, that they will be single file, won't they, when they come around, rather than going side by side, and it will make life. You can see very clearly how you've got the one dry line, and I guess
you've got a one dry line, but you've got a field of 25 or so cars, and 25 into one ain't going to go. Yeah. So how are they all sorted out up the hill on the opening lap? Even though it will be a single line start, there will be no doubt people taking flyers up the inside, and if they are all on slicks, which I fully imagine that they are, then it's going to be hopefully an exciting start, but not one that sees too much damage to cars.
So there we are, the conditions at the moment. Track temperature is quite warm, so it should dry off fairly quickly, but of course they'll all be running on the racing line, which you can see quite clearly looking much drier.
And also the curbs will be wet, and they tend to retain moisture because you see those serrated curbings, well, there's water held in those serrations. So anybody who runs over the curb, especially on the exit of a corner, will find a totally different level of grip to that there is on there, the lighter grey, which is the drying part of the track.
So an opportunity to get some, or try and get some heat in those slick tyres. They will get some heat in those tyres, actually, with the temperatures being reasonable here, but they are all on slick. So, of course, if they do put a wheel off, you have a very immediate loss of grip, and that's something they're going to have to be very, very cautious about indeed. It will certainly favour some of the more experienced campaigners, I think. Keep an eye on Matt Griffin. He's used to damp conditions from all his racing in the UK, former British GT champion. Now Federico Leo there, John, pulling right over. He's got a problem with the Ferrari.
It certainly is. I was wondering why he was pulling across, and that's on the back straight, and that car has come to a standstill. I can't even begin to guess what the issue may be, but clearly there is an issue with that car.
Oh, he's got it going again. Now, has he been passed by the last car? Yes. Well, no, not quite. No, there's the car that started from pit lane. Now, he wasn't quite passed by the last car. Does that mean he can retake his position, or will he stay where he is? The race has started and we're under safety car, so I guess really he has to stay in position now.
In my view, I would say he's got to stay there until the safety car then actually peels off the track, and I don't know how many laps we will have the safety car ride. We'll have to keep an eye on the safety car light or information from the screen.
Yeah, it's different to a normal formation. This is actually race underway, but behind safety car, so he won't be able to overtake. The clock is ticking away on the top of the screen, as you see. So the race is happening. It's just that no one is allowed to overtake behind safety car, so he'll just have to hold that position right at the back. Back but one, I think it was, with the Ford.
So I wonder, why was that Federico Leo with that black Ferrari 458, which was on the fourth row of the grid? Why did it pull over to the right, stop, let the field go through, and then rejoin just ahead of the Ford, which in technical terms should be starting from the pit lane?
Yeah.
Well, it has started from the pit lane. I mean, hopefully we'll get something from the pit lane itself to give us a reason why.
Yeah, all very, very strange. But anyway, the car's making their way around at the moment, and in fact there's a confirmation on our screens that car 50 will not resume its position. That is Federico Leo, so the race director very quick to put that up on the screen so the teams know that it will not be allowed to move back up. And we've still got a safety car situation now. I would imagine there won't be too many laps on behind safety car once the race director's happy that they've all worked out what the conditions are like. They're all on slick tyres. They've got this 1 hour race and they're not allowed to change tyres, so they've all gone for the slick racing tyres, as far as I know anyway. I think I had a quick look down in the paddock just before I came up, and all the cars I saw were on slicks. I talked to the guys at United Autosports, and even though they run the Dunlops, John, and it's quite a hard slick tyre, but even they know that they had to put the slick tyres on. So, yeah, and they know that that's going to take, so they know that with the Dunlops particularly, they're very good in the high temperatures and where the wear is high, but in these tricky conditions with a bit of dampness around, they know that it's going to be hard for them in the early laps particularly.
Well, one of the issues with the Dunlop tyre is that, for example, the BMWs, two of the BMWs run on that Dunlop tyre as well, the Need for Speed team, but the tyre that they use, for example, is a different dimension to the tyre that's used on the United Autosports R8 Audi in terms of the sidewall height and also the front width of the tyre. And the BMW probably is generating even more downforce than the R8 is. So a combination of those elements with the Dunlop tyre between the BMW and the Audi R8 makes for quite a different outcome. And Audi, the R8s of United Autosport, are not able to get more from that tyre than they're currently getting, and it's not a frustration, but it's a fact of life they've got to live with.
So another lap behind the safety car. Just a quick reminder that there has been a little bit of a change on some of the balance of performance figures coming into this race. The FIA Commission that basically monitors and adjusts the relative performance of the different cars to try and make it as even as possible. I have to say it's looking quite even, although of course some teams are still saying, well, we should be further up, but Just to quickly run through the list, the Aston's, the only one Aston in the race today, by the way, the other one's still parked up in the paddock. That's 10 kilos lighter for this event. The Ford GT has lost 35 kilos. The Audi R8s have got a slight increase in restrictor size. The BMW Z4s have been hit a little bit. They've had 20 kilos added to them, but they're still looking fast. The Lamborghini has lost 35 kilos, so the Gallardo that won yesterday, slightly lighter than it was running in the previous race. The 911, the Porsches, have lost 25 kilos and a slightly bigger restrictor, but they still feel they haven't got enough. Minus 35 kilos on the Mercedes, but the Ferrari 458, John, has had 25 kilos added to it.
Yeah, I mean, the 458 is fundamentally the car that should win every event because it is the most sophisticated car in terms of its layout and its engineering. But what you don't want is to have Ferrari 458 wiping the board at every round. So this balance of performance to try and equalise it out. A little bit more weight here, a bit less restricted there. Certainly for the Porsche 911, which was very much more competitive last year, struggled this year. And for the Audi R8s, they've been crying out to be given a bit more freedom of the restrictor to enable them to be more competitive, more consistent. But of course, the Audi R8s, some of them run on Dunlops that we've talked about, others are on the Michelin tire, and that in itself would probably more than equal out any benefits that you would be gained through weight lights are right, I think.
Yeah, no, we're going to go racing when they come back past us, which is good news. So we'll see whether those two BMWs up front, those two are on Michelin tyres. It's the other two BMWs in this race that are on Dunlop. So similar tyres to the cars around them. They've got the Audi R8 of Dino Lunardi and the Ferrari of Matt Griffin behind them. Then you've got Greg Franchi, another Audi, and the Aston Martin of Max Martin. What him particularly was very, very impressive yesterday in the GT1 race. Out of the final corner come the GT3 contingent then as we get ready for this second race to properly get underway here at Navarra. The race started under safety car, but now they are released on their slick tyres on a drying circuit, and they all head down through the kink and down towards the tightening turns 2 and 3. It's the two lead BMWs that started from the front row together, and already a bit of battling between Ferrari and Porsche further down the field. Now watch them here. This is where we can see some fun and games.
Well, the two BMWs got a clean break, but they've just bunched up second and third. The Audi and Matt Griffin and the Ferrari are on board with this Albert Montano Taxis and the Lamborghini, but a lot of bunching coming into turn 2 and 3.
Yeah, that's right, and the Porsche and the Ferrari were battling hard. I think Max Soule got back past in the Porsche, past the Ferrari. So keep an eye on the number 24 Gallardo, the car that we had the onboard shot there with. He's sort of held position. He's about 6th or 7th, I think, at the moment. Everyone else filing through, looking for that dry line, not going side by side because they know they'll get on the dirty or the wet and damp part of the circuit. Mercedes come through, the Porsche is indeed ahead of the Vittoria Ferrari, but it's the two BMWs in team order up front, under a bit of pressure from the Audi R8 of Dino Lunardi and then Matt Griffin's Ferrari.
Well, everybody, as you say, just being cautious on the opening lap, not prepared to take a punt either offline or... One thing is clear, that the curbs are not as bad as anticipated. Lots of drivers running the curb through turns 10, now into 11. This is the part of the racetrack. It is much tighter to drive than it looks on screen. Then all the way down a short sprint down to turn 13, down to second gear, maybe first gear in the case of some of these cars, and then up through the very quick turn 14, and before you're out of 14 you're almost onto the brakes to turn into turn 15.
There is Max Martin, the Aston, beginning to look a bit racy. It is Nicky Katzberg that leads the race though in his BMW Z4 with the championship leading car of Den Boer right behind. Not much to choose between them, but Max Martin moves out of the slipstream of the Audi, gets a bit of a squeeze on, but he takes the damp line and gets past. That was lovely from Max Martin.
Yeah, that move began on the edges of turn 15, and Martin was certainly on a mission. He wasn't about to be intimidated by the Audi. He went offline onto the damp into the track, but had sufficient grip to enable him to take control at turn 1.
Oh, that Ferrari again, the one that stopped.
Yeah, I mean, that's unbelievable.
Must be an electrical problem or something. It just keeps dying.
Well, electrical or hydraulic, but certainly most likely electrical, and that is a concern. The car, it is offline on the exit of turn 15. Nevertheless, it's a car stationary on the racetrack, that needs to be removed very quickly.
There's another of the Ferrari 458s, the new car in for this weekend. It's Iaconelli at the wheel at the moment. On board with Glyn Geddy here in the number 51 Ferrari. They had a bit of a trying time yesterday. Let's see what they can achieve this time. He is currently down in 12.
Yeah, he's in the middle of the pack and really just holding station, not looking like he wants to do anything too dramatic. Down at the back, but then to turn 8 and 9 through this long sweeping right-hand corner, and literally the Porsche gets up the inside of one of the Dunlop tired BMWs.
Yeah, that's Jan Halen in the number 2 Porsche, experienced campaigner that he is, and he made some pretty good progress in the first race yesterday. Once they changed the setup after qualifying, he was much happier with safety cars being called.
That's because the Ferrari, was a question of not when, or if, not when, so the car will have to be removed to safety if the safety car has been deployed.
Thankfully it's offline there. So.
Yes, but nevertheless, there's no easy way to get that car off the track. Either you've got to push it to sharp to the right, but you can't get in to the pit lane from there. So I don't know how they're going to get it back, other than they will have to take it all the way around on the back of a tow truck.
A really frustrating day for Federico Leo and the black Ferrari, which has had success this year, but it's still the 458. It's a very new car, of course, and there's some reliability issues, and something has caught them out, which has been intermittent. It happened on the initial start behind safety car, and now you see, look, it's running again after all that. But I wonder what they're going to do.
All you can do is switch everything off and reboot everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that on some of the cars where there's extremely high temperatures involved, because of the limitations within the GT3 rules, you're not allowed to cut holes in your bodywork, for example, to let air out. Your bodywork is going to be how it is homologated. So if your engine gets up to a threshold, which is a point at which then everything will shut down, I can't imagine that's the case with that particular Ferrari, because it's nowhere near warm enough. So clearly it's another problem, but by rebooting the whole system, they've got it to fire up, but he will have to drive back, and I assume he'll go straight back into the pit lane.
We saw Herbert Voss, thumbs up from him, because his car sits in second place at the moment, and a good chance here for them to extend their championship lead. But it's their teammate's car that's leading, driven by Nicky Katzberg at the moment, once again following the safety car, which he seems to have been doing quite a lot already in this race. Still 47 minutes to go in this one, and everybody waiting for their opportunity, of course, to get out in the cars when the pit window opens, but we're a little way away from that just yet. So I don't think the safety car will be out long. Yes, it's in fact confirmed it will be in at the end of this lap on our timing screens. So a very short safety car period, and we'll be able to go racing again.
Let's hope that Ferrari does make it round, because if it doesn't, we're going to be in the same situation. The only thing is, if it does stop at another part of the track, it will be easier to get it clear of the circuit. It was just the irony of being on the pit lane. There was no entry on the pit lane for that car to be pushed away, and it did actually manage to get away under its own steam anyway.
So Nicky Katzberg gets on the gas in his BMW, and that's a really good start. Yeah, some cloud building up, isn't there?
Yeah, not just over to the northeast of the circuit, a lot of very dark cloud indeed. So well, that's going to add another factor to this event or not, I don't know. Matt Griffin pulls right over to the right-hand side of the track, which is not the dry side of the track. I don't understand what his rationale is for that move. He's got Maxime Martin going to be all over him as they come through turn 1 and into the braking zone of turn 2 and then 3.
Maybe just getting some air into the car. Meanwhile, Dino Lunardi in the Audi R8, the black car, was right on the tail, wasn't he, there?
I mean, each of the proper racing laps we've had, the BMs have been slow in turn 3.
And Albert von Turner Taxis under threat here. He didn't get a good run there. I think he's managed to just about save himself. But look at the Ferrari coming down the inside. That's Iaconelli trying to get past the Porsche once again of Max Soule, but it didn't happen. You're on board with the other Ferrari behind the one we were just watching on the attack. This is Glyn Geddy. Now, there was contact between Ferraris yesterday. This car, the 51 car, got spun around when Dan Brown was driving it. Two Ferraris coming together at the last corner. Oh, he's having a little look at it. Did he touch?
No, I don't know if they touched, but certainly the Ferrari ahead, Giacomelli's car at the back end just left out. I don't think there was contact, but it looked particularly busy and messy in turn 8.
Well, that was pretty exciting stuff. Let's just see as he tries to get the power on through this tricky section. This next left-hander, John, wasn't it, when we were out yesterday?
You've really got to get the speed off, because the exit of the corner comes back on you. You can run the curb on the outside, but it's very easy to actually overrun that and get off the curb and find yourself in all sorts of problems.
Yeah, that lap that John and I did will be up on the
Let's look again and see. This is coming through turn 7.
Yeah, this was into the next one where it all got a bit exciting. Watch this. Yeah.
It's difficult to tell. There may have been a little bit of contact.
It was a puff of smoke, wasn't it?
It may have been just a small bit. You can't quite see the front of the bonnet or the splitter on the 458, and the rear of the 458 that he hit, you couldn't quite see whether there was contact clearly enough or not.
Yeah, the lap that John and I did will be up on the GT1 World website later, over the next couple of days, so you'll be able to see what it looked like. And we're doing that in 3D just to make life even more exciting. Looking at the number 44 Mercedes there, but that's way down in 19th place at the moment. Now, where is the Al Faisal car, the BMW that was so fast yesterday? Down in 18th.
18th, yep.
Yeah, so as is our Faisal Edward Sundstrom. Their car that they share is way down. It started a long way back. We've had this start under safety car, and there's not been much chance to make any ground yet.
Because they are one of the two BMWs that are on the Dunlop tyre, and because the ambience are much lower, they may be struggling just to get that bite point in the tyre. As we watch a little further, oh, impact right in the square and the side of car 11, and that was the BMW there. We see, so coming out of turn 8 down, back straight, big sideways slap, and the Mercedes was actually like a snooker ball, shunted off track.
Oh, now that's Claudia Hurtgen in the BMW. She's run wide.
Well, I'm not surprised, because she's probably damaged that car. That was a severe impact on the side of the Mercedes. The Mercedes is shaken and stirred, but not damaged. But the BMW certainly took an impact, and it may not have come off as well as the Mercedes.
No, she's struggling, isn't she? She's limping around now with that car, and that's really unfortunate. That's a fast car usually, but actually they've been struggling a little bit this weekend with that car for whatever reason. And let's take another look at this. This is where it all began. The Mercedes was wide at the previous corner.
Yes, it was. Porsche, Mercedes side by side, and then Claudia Hurtgen dives down the inside on the damp line. The Mercedes doesn't know what's there, turns in, square on side, and that's what's done. I suspect it's damaged the steering in Claudia Hurtgen's car, because it was literally wheel to wheel. And there you see the Mercedes being, well, he probably didn't even know what was going on, just suddenly found himself in contact, door handle to door handle, and pushed off the racetrack.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you move offline. Suddenly you have a lot less grip than you had when you were online, and there wasn't much you could do to slow the car down on that damp surface. So the leaders have come round again, of course. Katzberg from Den Boer, Lunardi is in third, Griffin in the Ferrari is in fourth, Max Martin in the Aston fifth. She's into the pits.
She's got a puncture left front, I think. Well, certainly something coming out of the left rear as well, a lot of smoke coming out of that too. That may just be simply the brakes, but the left front, I think, is the tyre, that wheel that has suffered as a consequence of that contact, so that's going to be replaced, and maybe she will be able to continue.
That other Ferrari, by the way, that kept stopping is behind them. Look, the number 50 car has made it back into the pits, and it is an electrical problem, we gather. So obviously an intermittent problem, so whether we'll see it back out or not, we'll obviously try and solve it. But the Claudia Hurtgen BMW is certainly coming back out onto circuit, having lost a good, well, half, three-quarters of a lap due to that pit stop. So the leader is still Nicky Katzberg in his BMW Z4, chased by a teammate, Den Boer, then Lunardi in the Audi, Griffin in the Ferrari, Max Martin in the Aston Martin, and then Franchi in another Audi. Then the first of the Mercedes, that's Mike Parisi running in 7th position. Still got those other two Ferraris pretty close to another, Iaconelli and Geddy, they're 11th and 12th. Further down the order, there's the BMW, just went through the shot of Alf Faisal. Oh, and that is the second place car.
Now where that happened, or why it happened, look at that. I mean, that's just ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous.
That's the championship leading car, and the other driver there, Herbert Voss, can't believe what's happened. What happened? He's lost it out of the last corner, and suddenly from them looking to really consolidate their championship lead, they've dropped right down through the field, and they are now, where is that car? Let's just see, it's in 11th place.
Why that occurred, we will probably get a replay of it, whether there was contact from behind, whether the Audi, which was the third place car, whether that had contact with the second place BMW, or whether it was just self-induced. But what was irritating was that when the car was turning to the racing line on the pit straight, just bumped into the Porsche, which was trying to keep out of the way.
Yeah, Soule has squeezed to the inside and squeezed a lot more than he was expecting, but he still managed to get past. There is Max Soule in the number 1 Porsche. He's tucked in behind Iaconelli in that Ferrari 458. He's got Glyn Geddy behind him as well. And then, well, that was all a bit dramatic. Den Boer is... where is he now? Has he dropped back further? We'll have to have a look, see where he is, because he came past
11th, but I think he may have
after
dropped
that
further back, yes.
Where is the car now? Check it out.
When there was contact, the BMW did have contact with the Porsche. We saw it happen to Claudia Hurtgen. When she had contact, she got a puncture on the left front. I wonder whether even with that milder contact with the Porsche has had a bearing on one of the front tyres on that second place, or what was second place BMW.
There it is in that mixed. Oh, and it's about to be passed by Jan Halen, is he? No. Halen in the Porsche, but he has gone a bit wide there. Oh, and the other Porsche, Max Soule's gone wide. Very slow as well.
He's got a puncture.
Yeah, he's hit somebody, hasn't he?
Well, he's got a puncture on the left front. Whether that's the consequence of the contact with the BMW, or whether that happened further round. There we see what was the second place BMW now regaining some of the ground that it lost, but it's going to be under attack from the Porsche. Porsche pulls out, gets alongside. Remember, the Porsches have had some relief on their air restrictor, and they managed to get just about ahead of the BMW coming into turn 1.
Oh, flashing lights won't help you Jeroen Den Boer, because that Porsche has gone past, and there was a very wide line from the Mercedes that was chasing with him.
BM's passed again.
Yeah, he's got the Porsche back. Den Boer retook him down at turns 2 and 3. So that was good stuff. The car very good under braking.
I think everybody's very cautious about getting offline there. We see the damage. Oh, look at the rim damage. That is a major bit of front end damage to that car.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if that was the contact we think it might have been.
It would have been the contact. Well, the damage to the Porsche was on the left side anyway, because the BMW came across.
So let's have a look. We've got to. Oh, that's a little move from the Ford.
This is the cause. Oh, he just lost it on his own.
The
just
second place car.
Yeah, nobody around, just simply got it all wrong.
Oh, look at them, just managing to avoid him.
Now watch as the BMW comes back. He just drives it back behind the Lamborghini. The Mercedes gets through. The Porsche, that's what happened to the Porsche's left front wheel. Not only did it flatten the tyre, but it's probably cost about €2,000 for another rim.
And Herbert Moss couldn't believe what he was seeing, could he? Because he thought they had a very safe second place. But it just shows you now, this is a bit of action from on board Glyn Geddes' car with the Den Boer car on the outside. So he has managed to go ahead. Yep, so he's managed to pass, and that was a fairly straightforward overtake through the kink. And out of the
Porsche. Soulet's out.
Oh, that's very disappointing. Paul Van Sprunteren there just behind him. Now that's it must have done more than just the wheel, John. It must have actually done damage to the suspension as well.
Well, the amount of damage to the rim, it's obviously the shock has gone through the suspension, and may well have damaged a pickup or a wishbone or something at the front of the suspension. That's been decided that it's better to be sure than send the car out with a potential bigger problem, and of course the consequence damage that could have resulted.
Now, Katzberg leads this race, but of course we've seen this before, where Katzberg has got a really good advantage, but of course his co-driver is not at the same sort of level as him, Harry Cullen, is he? So after the pit stops, it's going to make life very interesting. The number 3 Mercedes is still in the mix. There is Mike Parisi chasing down Greg Franchi in the Audi R8. So once the pit stops come along, and that's not too far away, we're just under 3 minutes from the pit window opening up, that's going to certainly change things around, because it will very much depend on the pace of the co-drivers.
I mean, one of the things I'm surprised at, I thought Matt Griffin would have made more progress. Currently in 3rd place behind that Audi, and then, of course, behind Nicky Katzberg in the leading BMW. And I'd expected Matt Griffin to make, as I say, just simply get on terms with the Audi and then to challenge the BMW. But nothing really has happened in the front other than the incident that we saw a moment or two ago with the 2nd place BMW.
Yeah, but don't forget there's some good drivers ahead of him. Nicky Katzberg and Dino Lunardi, very experienced GT racers. Katzberg might be a youngster, but he's done a lot. Dino Lunardi really is a very, very capable racer. So it's not so easy, and I guess with Griffin, well, he's actually got a bit closer to the Audi.
But what I'm thinking about is Matt Griffin we know about, but principally the 458, I would have thought would have been a more competitive car than the Audi R8 is. I mean, the only advantage that Audis have got here right now is that they are affected by very high temperatures, and that can have a significant bearing on how the car will perform both. And runs wide in turn 2. Yeah, that was Iaconelli, I think, in the number 38 car. So he's rejoined. Well, is he afflicted with the same problem that we saw with the Federico Leo Ferrari? Certainly, he's able to move, but the car is not running at racing speed, and it seems odd that 2 458s are really struggling. Yeah, no, there's something. I mean, I don't know what happened there, but whether he had a brake problem or something, but he's certainly going slowly now. He's concerned. He's not up to full racing speed. There's Mike Parisi, very, very quick French driver who had a lot of success last year, and certainly in the battle for the championship when he was driving a Corvette. He's driving the big Mercedes now. He's maybe thinking about a move down the inside into turn. Down the range, back straight, but not able to get on terms with the Audi. Everybody being very cautious, really, but choosing whether they are going to take a shunt down the inside, knowing that offline the track, while it is drying, is certainly not dry enough to maybe make that risk worthwhile. Talked to Richard Westbrook after the GT1 warm-up this morning, and he was saying actually in wet conditions this track has pretty good grip. He was quite impressed. He thought it might be quite slippy when the rain comes down. There's Harry Cullen, who will take over the lead car when it comes in from Nicky Katzberg, so he's trying to get himself in the zone, but can he defend that lead, which has opened up quite appreciably over recent laps. So we'll have to see whether he can hang on to that position. Across the line goes the race leader. 2nd place is still the Audi behind him, and the gap 3.9 seconds from Katzberg to Lunardi. And the pace is still pretty good from Katzberg, isn't it? It is. I mean, they're running 1 minute middle, 1 minute 40. The rest of the field are in the 141s, as is the Audi and the Ferrari behind. So the pace is actually surprisingly good, bearing in mind that there's a very narrow window, the line that you can drive on. So, I mean, the race pace now actually is probably no different to what it was on Saturday afternoon, and it was very much hotter, but a fully dry circuit.
Now, the 35 car has had a drive-through penalty for dangerous driving. So that was the car that was in second place, remember, had the spin up at the top and then almost collided with the Porsche when it rejoined. So I don't know whether that was the issue. I suppose it was. He's been done with a drive-through penalty.
Well, rightly too, because not only did he spin, which is anybody can have a problem spinning, but it was the manner in which he then regained his position on the racetrack. Let's look at it again there. The car goes round. Now, you've got to pick your spot when you're going to rejoin the race. And you look, and think you've got time. The Mercedes goes through, the Lamborghini comes through now. Then all of a sudden he hesitates because another Mercedes comes through, but then he picks on the poor Porsche. Not only does he hit the Porsche, but he effectively takes the Porsche out of the race.
Yeah, tricky one that, because everyone else was going to the outside, but the Porsche went to the inside. It's always a hard situation to read. As you come round a corner, you're blind, of course, you don't know what's out there, so a tricky one.
Well, the Porsche's now gone back out. They've decided not to retire the car. They've checked the suspension.
They've probably swapped drivers. They might have waited until that window opened up.
Yes, good idea, good move.
So it will still be a couple of laps down, but at least Paul van Splunderen gets an opportunity to come out and drive. What's happened? Mike Parisi has made the move there, so he's gained one in the Mercedes. He's got past Greg Franchi, so that we're beginning to see people now risking going off the perfect racing line. There's a bit more grip now.
Yeah, and to do that in the particular corner, he did it into turn 12. That's not the easiest corner to get past. It's very small, very narrow entry and an even tighter exit.
The Lamborghini Gallardo here of Albert Montana Taxis still in the mix, though. It's running in 7th place. It's behind that Audi that was passed a second ago.
Yeah, I mean, Albert Montana Taxis struggling more than he did yesterday. He did a very good job to bring that car home to win the first race for GT3 here this weekend. But in these trickier conditions, maybe the limitations of his ability are now being shown.
The car that finished second yesterday in the pits, but it's a long way down in this race because they qualified rather poorly for this one, and Al Faisal hasn't been able to make many overtaking manoeuvres, so Edward Sundstrom now will have the work to try and cut through. But of course he's got a chance to do some quick laps in the meantime, hasn't he? Yeah, on his Dunlop tyres.
Yeah, I think that's the problem for the top runners. They're not able to generate the temperature as quickly as the Michelin tyre will do. The Michelin tyre is the predominant tyre. The Audi and the two BMWs on the Dunlop prefer it to be stinking hot, so as they can get that tyre to work, and it has got probably a longer window of performance, but it doesn't have the peak of performance that the Michelin tyre has.
No, that's right. So they want it hot and roasting like it was yesterday, but it's not like that here today. There's the number 15 Audi that's running in second place behind Katzberg. The gap up to over 5 seconds now. The other Porsche just coming out of the pits as well, I think that was, isn't it?
Well, it was BMW.
Oh, was it? Sorry. Okay, so BMW out of the pits. Meanwhile, this is the race that's going on for second place. In comes Albert Montana Taxis, so this is going to be the changeover. Nicky Melnoff will now take over in this car. Just to remind you, they have a minimum time that they have to sit in the pit lane, so it's not a sort of race against the clock when they're in the pits, not like GT1. 65 seconds is the minimum time, but a couple of the teams have a longer stop because of their success at Silverstone, and actually that includes the race leader, interestingly. They have a 10-second... well, actually, that was for the first race, so we'll have to check that when we'll see them come into the pits, but they may have to have a longer stop for the race leader. So there's number 4 Mercedes into the pits now as well, and Lambot is handing over, and hopefully this will just be a straightforward. There's no tyre changing, no refueling. It is simply a driver change and then hold the car until the allotted time has been spent in the pit lane, and then off they go again. Just
watching the Audi driver being literally dragged from the seat of his car to enable him to get out. Of course, these cars have got very substantial rollover hoops in the car. The Lamborghini, by the way, with Nicholas Meyer-Meyhoff is moving and down the pit lane, and expect to see that car now from where it came into the pits in 7th place, and everything cycles through. Should be more competitive. I think Albert Montana Taxis was being careful and cautious and not taking any chances and just bringing the car in and let his Austrian teammate take it over and hopefully go out and put it back onto the podium.
Well, let's see what happens. They had the victory yesterday. What can they do today? Fastest lap in this race has gone to the race leader. Nicky Katzberg, no surprise there, and 139.9. Last time around wasn't quite so quick, and you just saw him go through. You've still got the good racing going on. Mike Parisi is still the man on the charge in the Mercedes, and he's trying to get past Max Martin in the Aston Martin here. Two front-engine cars together, and that Mercedes really is a consistent car. We saw that yesterday. Now can he get down the inside? He's having a little look. Martin trying to give him space.
He forced the issue, and he forced the Aston wide. Aston got onto the slightly damper bit of the track, couldn't keep the car in position, and that was a good move. That was a clean overtaking manoeuvre, and he sort of bullied Maxime Martin into that because he could see the Mercedes coming closer. Martin went over to the left, got onto the dirty part of the track, and of course the position was then lost. So that's up from 5th to 4th for Mike Parisi in the Mercedes, and Maxime Martin has lost that position. He's down to 5th.
Yeah, Parisi's a real star in GT3. It's lovely to see him getting to go.
Oh, trouble at BMW.
Yeah,
No Mercedes,
yeah, that's right. So that isn't a particularly good way to take number 45 car. That is, they had a good result yesterday, actually. That was Bosey, Dominic Baumann and Bryce Bosey, and I think it's actually, they have not yet stopped in that car, so it's... let's just take a look and see. This was the move when Mike Parisi managed to get through. Down the inside.
Yeah, he got the nose of the car. Martin saw it. Martin then runs slightly off to the left. The Mercedes continues to sweep out, and of course that was a relatively easy pass. A little bit of threat and bullying on the part of Mike Parisi, but that's part of motor racing.
Yeah, that's right. It was actually Patrick Hirsch, my mistake, not Bryce Bosey. Patrick Hirsch who had that little... what was that? Just take a look at this again.
Big spin. That's coming up through turn 7 into turn 8, and that's what we saw was a spin under brakes, and the Ferrari again has stopped on the track.
I thought I saw something stopped, and well, what is it going to be? But that number 50 Ferrari. So Patrick Hirsch had the spin. Now it's a stopped Ferrari once again. Iaconelli, I think, is still in that car. I don't think they've had their driver change. Of course, they made a pit stop earlier, but I don't think they've had the driver change. And, well, how are they going to get rid of that car? Are they going to have to pull safety car out?
It's not Federico Leo in that black Ferrari.
Yeah, sorry, yes, Federico Leo. Yes, not Iaconelli, yes, Federico Leo in that one. If the safety car would have come out now, John, this would make a bit of a meal at the pit stops, of course, because some have had their pit stops and some haven't.
I think the balance of views is that the Ferrari is not in a particularly dangerous position. It's not ideal, but they will recognise that the car was able to reboot and get underway under its own steam. Nevertheless, it's going to have to be observed, and if it stays there for more than a lap, we might well see the safety car deployed, just in the interest of safety, bearing in mind that the track isn't fully dry, that offline it is possible to get into trouble.
On board with Nicky Marmelhoff, who is, having made that stop, is definitely going on a bit of a charge here in the number 24 Lamborghini Gallardo. Somebody up ahead of him, not the car immediately ahead, was a little wide turning into turn 15. Let's see as he comes back across the line here, and he's certainly putting a little bit of pressure on that Mercedes just ahead of him.
And he's going to get up alongside. Is he going to make it before they get into turn 1? Mercedes got a lot of speed, and he does. He just puts himself on the inside. The Mercedes concedes, and all of a sudden he's running up the back. There must be waved yellow flags up there. The drivers have got to be very careful. In fact, Nicholas Meyer-Meinhof has dropped back behind that Mercedes. Clearly there was a waved yellow flag up there. He realised he'd made an error. He had to allow that Mercedes to retake that position. Clever thinking of Nicholas Meyer-Meinhof. He shouldn't have made the move in the first place, but having caused the issue, he backed out of it.
So into the pits has come 21, Matt Griffin's car. He hands over to Duncan Cameron now. Looks as though we've got some of the other lead cars, not all of them coming into the pits. We still haven't seen Katzberg come in. He's going to leave it to the last moment.
I just wonder with that Ferrari, if it is an electrical problem, is the car actually in gear, or how do they disengage it if it is in gear?
Yeah, that's a good point. Still some racing going on further back. The number 4 Mercedes there of Demoustier, kind of battling away hard with the United Autosports Audi, number 22 car, but back down the inside. Don't touch each other, boys, just giving each other enough space. The Mercedes gets squeezed out to the edge of the track, and they make it through there somehow. Mark Patterson in the United Autosports car, and behind, look, Nicholas Marmenhoff getting involved as well. He split the two of them.
Yeah, somehow happy. We saw just one lap ago where he passed coming up into turn, well, between 1 and 2. So the pit lane is going to close in just under 20 seconds or so from now as somebody flies.
Yeah, that was the race leader, I think, Nicky Katzberg. He's left it to the very last
moment. It literally is. I mean, he couldn't leave it any later, because by the time he gets to the pit lane entrant, well, there he is now coming into the pit lane, 13 seconds remaining. couldn't leave it any later.
This is going to be very interesting. And I tell you what, Lunardi has come in from second. I was wondering for a moment whether they'd left it too late, but they have come into the pit. So the top two cars into